Texas A&M head coach Mike Elko is going to be more involved with the defense this season.
You are Locked On Aggies, your daily podcast on the Texas A&M Aggies, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome on into Locked On Aggies. I'm your host, Andrew Stefaniak. Thanks for making Locked On Aggies your first listen every single day. On the show today, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to talk a little bit about Caden Sorrell. There was an announcement on his injury status. We'll break that down. We heard from Coach Elko yesterday. We heard some quotes, and we have some things to talk about with that. I have two things I'm concerned about. We'll get to those in segment 2. But one thing I'm excited about, which is what Coach Elko had to say about him getting more involved with the defense. So the quote was, it's about him, hey, are you more involved defensively this year? And it says, we kind of addressed it throughout the offseason that I'll have a bigger role in what we're doing. It's an identification of an issue that needs to be solved and believing I have the ability to help solve it. So somebody commented on there and said, Jimbo Part 2. And I don't agree with that. Mike Elko is an incredible defensive mind, and we want him to help. Like, I think the issue with the Jimbo comparison, and this is how I explain this. I think the folks that are saying Jimbo Part 2, the issue was you hired Petrino, a historic offensive mind. And everyone's like, let him run the show. He's one of the best in college football history to ever call offensive plays. He's dominant. Let him do his thing, right? That's what we hoped. And, of course, that didn't happen. That was one of the most significant offseason topics surrounding all of college football was, would Jimbo Fisher let Bobby P do his thing? And the answer to that we found out was no. Maybe he said he was, but the answer was no. So now we sit here and we look at what Coach Elko is saying, and I want him to be involved in the defense. I think that all he's going to do is help. It's not like he's going to be butting heads with anybody on the sidelines saying, well, what the heck are we doing here? What is going on? It's not going to be like that. I think that Coach Elko is simply going to be a helping hand for this defense. I like the idea of him being more involved. So I think a lot of folks are sitting there. Yeah, the Jimbo comparison, I don't agree with that. I don't understand that. I don't think that makes a ton of sense. I think that Coach Elko being more of a help on defense is great. Yes, the job of the head coach is to do things like make decisions on, are we punting, are we kicking the field goal, are we going for it? There are lots of duties a head coach has. But to me, why not? He's your head coach for a reason because he was an elite defensive coordinator. Let him help with your defense. I know that you have a DC and all that, but come on. That's my take on the matter. So I kind of liked that quote, to be honest with you. Coach Elko started, and we'll now run through the rest of his quotes. He started the press conference saying, obviously 3 practices in. I'm not going to make any grand statements on where we're at. We're headed in a good direction and looking forward to where it goes. This quote about Marcel Reed, I'm going to read it. I'm not going to talk too long about it because we're going to talk about it here in 10 minutes or so. But he says, Marcel Reed has been good. Obviously, it's early. There's still lots to do. He has embraced the challenge in taking the next step. He knows and he wants to throw the ball better. He's meeting that challenge head on. We're going to talk about some quotes from Reuben Owens here in a minute, and Reuben Owens talks a little bit about about Marcel Reed as a passer, and then we're going to talk about that. Because I'm a little, I think concerned is a strong term, but we'll get there in a minute. Coach Elko had this to say about Reuben Owens, who was at the podium a few minutes before him. He says, Reuben Owens would have gotten his reps regardless. It is nice to see him back and healthy from the time he got hurt in fall camp to now. You see the way he has attacked this thing. You see the passion for football. He's attacked every bit of it. He still needed to get his timing back. So, and we'll read a quote from Reuben Owens who talks about what I'm going to talk about right now. But Reuben Owens said, himself, hey, football was going really well for me. I was playing well. And that was what we had all heard, right? And then he gets the injury, and then it kind of goes, oh, okay, Reuben Owens, that stinks. He was playing well. There was excitement around him. So I think that's going to be the same this year. I think there's going to be more hype around him. And, of course, I think he's going to live up to it. Coach Elko then had this to say about man coverage defense. It's just making sure we can clean up expectations, clean up the way we're teaching, clean up the way they're learning and processing. It's been good. We spent a lot of time in walkthroughs. There is not a single person in our building that is excited with how we played defense down the stretch last year. Myself, obviously, I agree with that. The players have a lot of pride in making sure it gets back to the way it was. The coaches have a lot of pride in making sure it gets back to the way it was. So, we're going on now multiple years where the secondary has been a problem for this Texas A&M football team. And to me, it's clear that Coach Elko is going to do some stuff to figure that out because, we've discussed it here on Locked On Aggies, as you everydayers know. If this Texas A&M secondary is not going to be better, it's hard to kind of see a world where this team sees a ton of success, just knowing how important it is to have a secondary that is, locked down really good, right? So I want to see the secondary continue to get better and better, and it's clear that to Coach Elko and to this coaching staff, that is a main priority. Coach Elko had this to say about the defensive tackle position. I wouldn't say anything is set. It's an open audition for everyone to go and get reps. Our challenge is to all of those guys is to go out and earn reps. You've got 5 guys that if you put them on the podium, they would tell you that their plan is to sit the bench and take a back seat. So kind of a weird quote. We'll talk about that in a minute as well. We're talking about the defensive line stuff and the Marcel Reed stuff. Coach Elko had this to say about replacing Nick Scorton, Shmar Turner, and Shmar Stewart. That's college football. If you're running a program right in the SEC, you're going to have NFL talent walk out the door at the end of the season. There is a lot of kids in the locker room that want to step into that spotlight. Cassius Howell, Rylan Kennedy, some of the transfers were brought in. Those kids want to become household names to Aggie fans. So, a lot of special players that this staff's going to have to not, obviously replace, but you're going to have to replace the production they were bringing because, as we know, it was pretty impressive. They were great last year and obviously Stewart and Turner for the last few years. So, then you're potentially replacing 2 first-round picks, which is that should be a yearly occurrence for the Texas A&M defensive line. It should be often you're replacing defensive line. So, we're going to talk about quotes from Reuben Owens. He talks about his health, what he's working on, and he talks a little bit about Marcel Reed. Then we're going to talk some kind of more interesting topics within this on the D-line and Marcel Reed. We'll talk about all those things coming up right here on Locked On Aggies. But first, I got to tell you about our friends over at Monarch Money. Ever check your bank account and wonder where the heck did all my money go? Between dining out, online shopping, and entertainment, it's easy to lose track. That's where Monarch Money comes in. Your professional CFO giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money isn't just a budgeting app. It's a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, investments, and spending in one place. So stop just managing your money and start building wealth. When I started using Monarch Money, I realized how much I was spending on silly things that I didn't need. And now I'm budgeting smarter and saving more. I just bought, if anyone's seen Bull Durham, I watch Bull Durham every single year before the baseball season starts. And I bought a Crash Davis jersey today. Monarch Money probably would tell me that was a stupid purchase, right? I bet it would. Instead of juggling multiple apps, you can use Monarch to check your finances, track spending, and even plan long-term goals. Managing money with your partner is smoother than ever. You can track shared and personal accounts, set goals, and stay on the same page without stress. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONCollege at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONCollege for half off your first year. So we also heard from Reuben Owens. We're going to run through some quotes from him, and then we're going to talk about some of these more interesting, bigger topics, which is the D-line and Marcel Reed. So Reuben Owens said, toward the bowl game, I felt all right, but I wasn't 100%. Now I feel a lot better. It still has a little pain to it, but nothing I can't get through during the spring. So, I mean, it's crazy to me that he, kind of did play through that. I mean, I would have, hearing that, I probably would have just been like, all right, dude, we'll hold you out for a few weeks. But, yeah, I think that Reuben Owens, when we get to the start of the season, is going to be healthy, and he'll be a part of that 1-2 punch of him and Le'Veon Moss that I think will be one of the best in the SEC. Talking about his injury, he said it really hurt because I felt like I was having a good fall camp and was going to have a big sophomore year, something we've talked about a ton here on Locked On Aggies. I just had to get through it and get to work immediately so I could get back as fast as I could. He then went on to say this about the Texas A&M running back room as a whole. Our room, we're brothers. We stick together. We're all talented, and we're all going to have good years. It's going to be very different. I think that, I love hearing that this unit of these Texas A&M running backs are tight like that because, I mean, as y'all know, I think that this Texas A&M running back room is a top 3 unit, not only in the SEC, but honestly in all of college football. I mean, there are not many running backs better than Le'Veon Moss right now. There just aren't. That's just the reality. It's just what it is. There aren't many running backs better than Le'Veon Moss, and I don't think there's many 1-2 punches better than Le'Veon Moss and Reuben Owens. Reuben Owens then went on to talk about this with the offensive line. I'm glad all of those guys came back. With them blocking for me and all of us, it could be very good. Another thing we've talked about a good amount here on the Locked On Aggies podcast is just how good the offensive line is going to be this year, knowing that you're returning all of that production. Texas A&M is going to be bringing back a lot of great players, a lot of dominant offensive linemen that are going to help create space for this running game. So when you put together this running back room and this offensive line is going to be blocking for him, it should be one of the better running attacks in the SEC, especially when you add into that how much, Marcel Reed's going to be running the football and all that. I mean, Texas A&M's rushing attack should be absolutely dominant this year, so I'm pretty excited to see that. Reuben Owens then had this to say on his message to Le'Veon Moss with the injury he had last year. It's football. Injuries happen. He got right after it too. You just have to have a strong mind to get through it, and you'll be good. And I think that's what both of these running backs have done. What he's been working on this offseason, Reuben Owens talked a little bit about. He said, I got way stronger. It helps you break tackles more and run harder. I mean, that is really good stuff to hear. I mean, we want Reuben Owens to be that strong back that it's tough to bring him down. It's not easy. You're not going to just wrap him up and take him down like that. He's a tough guy. It is not going to be easy to you. You're going to have to wrap up. You're not going to be able to just hit him. You got to wrap him up if you want to take down Reuben Owens. And then he's had this to say about Le'Veon Moss. There's a few similarities like explosiveness. Le'Veon is a real powerful runner. He's a strong runner. I feel like I'm more of a finesse runner. And I agree with that. I think that, Reuben is your guy that's going to make somebody miss in the open field. Now, if you asked me to describe both of their games, I would tell you that I think they're both the exact same in the way that they can do everything. Yes, I would. When it comes to being a power back, I'll take Moss over Owens. When it comes to being a finesse back, I'll take Owens over Moss. But I think that both of these guys are incredibly talented at every aspect of being a good running back, and that's something that you need to be a talented room of running backs, a stable. You got to have lots of guys that are able to do different things. So I was happy to see his quote on that. Now here's the quote on Marcel Reed from Reuben Owens, and then we're going to get to talking about Marcel Reed a little bit because I think this is interesting. He said, Marcel has been throwing pretty good. He just got to get more confident in throwing it because he can throw the ball. The quote, that quote, and then the quote from Coach Elko and Marcel Reed, I definitely have my concerns on how much development that we have seen from Marcel Reed as a passer. Now, it is March. Let's think about this. March. So we got April, May, June, July. We've got about 5 months until the season starts, right? Like, let's just be realistic. We've got 5 months till the season starts. And, knowing that, I think that if we hear a quote like this in 3 months, be like, it's been a good offseason for Marcel. Things are going well. He's just got to develop a little bit more as a passer, right? Like, if we hear that in a few months, I'm going to be like, ooh, I don't like that. But, hearing that right now, I kind of am not super concerned because, once again, this is what he and this staff are working on this offseason. Their goal is to improve Marcel Reed as a passer. And this is something we've talked about a lot here on Locked On Aggies. And, knowing that Marcel Reed is a great runner, he's really good with his legs, and he can, run the football all over the field, and he's really talented in that aspect of the game. If he can get better as a passer, he's a guy that will be one of the better quarterbacks in the SEC. Because I've said this before, and I'll say this often because I think it's something that needs to be discussed when breaking down this Texas A&M football team, and that is if Marcel Reed doesn't get any better, if Marcel Reed shows up for the first game of the season playing the same way he did in the last game of the season, I believe the Aggies can win 8 football games, right? And that's serious, based on, because obviously quarterback plays a huge role in how good your team's going to be. But that's, I think, a bold take. And the reason I make that take is, so if he's able to take that jump to the next level, that is where Marcel Reed becomes a star. That is where he becomes really, really, really good, is if he develops as a passer. So that is what is going to make or break the future of this season for the Aggies. I'd say more the upside. The upside of the season for the Aggies is how much he develops as a passer. This team can win 8 football games. This team can be pretty good and all that. But can this team win 10 football games? That is what is going to be decided by how much the development we see from Marcel Reed. I didn't like Coach Elko's quote on the defensive line because, it's a coach quote. It's not like he's anything wrong. It's just kind of the whole it's early. We'll see. I would have kind of hoped. I think if you want to instill confidence in the fan base, who I think is a little concerned about the interior defensive line, I think you come out and say, man, I tell you what, this player and this player and this player have been damn good for us. They've been incredible. They've been really good. And I think that they're going to have a great season for us. And I think that they're going to be the difference maker. You know what I mean? Like, that's kind of I think that is how I would sit here and break down. That's how if I was trying to instill confidence in my team, that's what I would say. So, that is kind of why I think that we need to see. That's where my concern comes from with the defensive line, and I've talked about it this week. That's where my concern comes from. So, we'll see what happens there. But I just would have loved for Coach Elko to come out and said, this guy's going to be the stud in the middle of our defensive line. It's going to be tough to get around him. He's going to plug the run. He's going to get after the quarterback. He's going to create pressure. Would have loved to have heard that. So that's my only issue with that quote. Not too concerned about it, but still something to talk about. Sounds like Caden Sorrell is going to be back for the Aggies this weekend against the Kentucky Wildcats. We are going to talk about this coming up right here on Locked On Aggies. But first, I got to tip it our friends over at Nissan. We're all about the stats because the numbers don't lie. And when it comes to the all-new Nissan Armada Pro 4X, the numbers are on an MVP level. With the ability to up to 8,500 pounds, it can quite literally carry the whole team plus the year. Wherever you need to go, it's powered by a twin-turbo V6 engine delivering the strength and performance to handle highways, back roads, and everything in between. And with room for up to 8 people, the Armada Pro 4X is built for big crews, big adventures, and even bigger memories. Whether you're exploring off-road trails or rolling up to the arena, the Armada Pro 4X brings power, versatility, and style wherever you go. Take your adventures to new heights in the all-new Nissan Armada Pro 4X. Learn more at nissanusa.com. Also want to show y'all the little promo for our bracket breakdown between Locked On and Amazon Fire. Really cool stuff. Breaking down the Sweet 16, and here's a promo for that.
The NCAA tournament is here, and so is the bracket breakdown.
Locked On Podcast Network and Amazon Fire TV channels are teaming up to deliver NCAA tournament coverage like never before. Watch studio shows featuring former players and Locked On's local experts as they guide you through every upset, buzzer beater, and bracket matchup.
Stream it all for free on Amazon Fire TV channel. Search Bracket Breakdown to see it all for free.
It's your team every day.
So we got some good news for a baseball team that has been, I think the way to describe it would be desperately looking for some good news. And, you know, looking at the news that Caden Sorrell is going to be back, I mean, it's great to hear that. There's definitely been some concerns with him as, you know, like what's going to happen with Caden Sorrell, and the injury happened, but this baseball team is looking for positive news, and I think they just got some knowing that Caden Sorrell is going to be back. You got a big series coming up this weekend against Kentucky, and I'm serious. I mean, you know, you play 30 of these games, right? So when you finish your third series, you're pretty much a third of the way. Obviously, you're 9 games in, so you're almost a third of the way done. And I'll tell you this, I think that if you lose this series, whether you get swept or just, you know, win one game, and you're either 1-8 or 0-9, I don't see this team making the comeback. It would be so hard. I think that, you know, 3-6 or 2-7, hey, at least you got a shot if you get hot. But I'm just telling you, if we're 1-8 or 0-9, I don't think this team's gonna make the postseason any chance at all. So if you want a chance to make a comeback and turn the season around, it's going to start this weekend. Now, Sorrell, how much is he going to play? We'll still see. And remember, you know, it's not easy to just – this is his first game. You know, he's going to be like the MLB. This is his first game. He's walking out there trying to get hot. He hasn't seen a ton of live pitching probably, so this is not going to be easy for him. He might not have his best weekend, but, I mean, he's one of your better bats. He had a great year last year. Hitting 275, and you know, I think that he's going to be a guy that will take this, you know, hit 11 bombs last year. Hopefully he helps continue to move this Texas A&M baseball team in the right direction. So that was some good news. It was good to see that. That is going to do it for today's episode of the Locked On Aggies podcast. Really appreciate y'all being here every single day. Got a fun one coming up tomorrow on Friday. Talk a little bit about this baseball series. Hope everyone has a great rest of their Thursday, and we'll see you tomorrow right here on Locked On Aggies.